Persona is yet another film from the legendary Swedish director Ingmar Bergman. It is considered by many to be the Mount Everest of films to analyse, so best of luck to us today on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello, yes, welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Once again, we're doing something funky with our setups. Shane has a full-blown setup here, whereas I have had to relocate for the next two episodes, as I have a guy working at home with the drill as we are recording, so, not going to be doing that. And yes, of course, I referred to Shane there, who is my co-host, not guest host. Shane, how are you?
I'm in a bit of a daze, I'll be honest, Harry, after watching Persona. So I don't really know what's going on, what day of the week it is, how I feel about anything, other than the fact that I really like Persona, even though I understood maybe like 10% of it. So how about you?
Yeah, very good. This is from, obviously, Ingmar Bergman, we've covered once before, the director who directed the winning film in our first ever classic film Euros, The Seventh Seal. And this is my second time seeing Persona. I think as far as Bergman's films go that I've seen, it's probably one that you could talk about the most, and it's probably one of the ones that I find the most interesting, and yet I don't consider it to be one of my favorites of his films. But it is such an amazing achievement in montage, and I saw one quote. I don't know who said it, so I can't credit them, I'm afraid. But I saw one guy who once very accurately said, the thing about Persona is you can make a full-blown case about it meaning a certain thing, and the opposite could also still be true.
100%.
It's such an interesting film to talk about. And yeah, it's very funny because, like, of Bergman's other films that I've seen, they're far more like straight-laced narrative that occurs, and you can definitely tell very much what the subtext is. This is, as you would often say about a film, this is a trip.
Yeah.
Shane, what did you think? This is your first time seeing Persona. How did you feel about Persona in a spoiler-free review?
I was dazzled, befuddled, mesmerized, frustrated by Persona. It's like, you can't fit Persona into a box. You can't just, there's not like you said, there's not any one interpretation that is definitely true. If you watch it so many times, you'll figure all the secrets out of all the sandbox. It's literally like you're almost bringing your own experiences, your own biases, your own kind of reading into it, and then you're just trying to shoehorn that into what you think the film is about. I mean, Ingmar Bergman himself said that, like, he's not going to come out and tell people what he intended.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like all opinions are valid, and I do when it comes to art, I absolutely respect that with artists. It's not up to, like, once it's out in the world, people's reception to it then is what is. You can't just you can't try and enforce your opinion on it. So I really respect him for that. And anyway, I don't think there is anyone like reading of it that is necessarily correct, because it's very contradictory. Like there's a lot of evidence you could point to and say this is what it is, but then there's also so much more evidence you could say this is what it is, and then there's also other evidence you could say and that's what it is. So it's just, it's so contradictory. But yeah, I was absolutely mesmerized by it. Even though I have to be honest, Bergman and David Lynch falls into this category as well. I love the works that I've seen of them. Like they really are like no one else in their kind of periods of time, if you want to call it that, in cinema. But because of how, I wouldn't call it inaccessible, but because of how much of a unique vision, unique artists they are, a lot of their work is kind of hard to grasp. You almost have to like just allow yourself to be swept up in the vision. Mm-hmm. And so with that, there isn't any one clear like kind of message that there is a message the film wants it to come away from, I'm sure, but there's no, like, they're not going to tell you what that is. So as much as I enjoy Bergman's work and David Lynch's work, like that is kind of, it makes me kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? It makes me kind of
There's,
afraid.
there's zero spoon feeding going on from these
Exactly that. Yeah,
directors.
it makes me almost
Zero.
yeah.
I'd put. I know. I don't think you've seen any of his films, but I would absolutely put Tarkovsky in the same
No, I've not seen
boat
Tarkov.
as
Yeah,
those two. I've seen two of Tarkovsky's films. I gave both of them 5 stars. Both of them are like out of body experiences.
yeah,
But if you look away from the screen for like a matter of seconds,
yeah,
you can find yourself totally lost as to what's going on. And as well, especially with Tarkovsky with Solaris, that ending is similar to this film. Tarkovsky purposely never explained what the ending means. I have my own personal interpretation of what the ending of the film means, but I then looked on Reddit and Letterboxd and Twitter, and again, similar to Persona, I found a bunch of people whose interpretations are like the exact opposite of my interpretation, and yet you could argue that both apply. But yeah, I put Tarkovsky in the same sort of boat as those two directors. There's zero spoon feeding going on here.
yeah. No, 100%. That's exactly why I'm like I really want to get into the much more of the work, but I'm also reluctant to because it's like I'm afraid I'll just out myself as an absolute dummy, which I'm sure if you've seen 50 episodes of the podcast, 50 odd episodes, you'll already know that. I know that by now, but it's like I don't want everyone else to know that. So it's like this guy, there isn't, like I said, any one interpretation that's correct anyway, and that's obviously what Ingmar Bergman has said. But like the two main performances, Bibi Andersson and Liv Ullmann, are phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
so committed. So they absolutely nail what he's going for, which is this like dreamlike, yet also nightmarish quality at the same time. And it really like it's a performance or a pair of performances that only work when you view the other one as well as like it really is a double act in that kind of sense. Like one doesn't work without the other, and you have to judge it, or you have to kind of watch it as a two kind of as a twofer, if you want to call it that. You can't just kind of praise one without praising the other, or criticize one. I don't know why you would criticize it, but let's say criticize one without criticizing the other, because they really are intertwined in that kind of sense.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. I think Bibi Andersson is incredible in
She's
this film
amazing.
because, with regards to the plot, the majority of the plot of this film is essentially Bibi Andersson plays a nurse called Alma. She has been tasked with looking after this somewhat famous actress named Elizabeth, who is played by Liv Ullmann, who, for whatever reason, for whatever unknown reason, despite all tests suggesting it shouldn't be the case, she doesn't seem to be able to talk. It kind of happened for a moment or two for a little while, and now she is just full blown mute. The only indication that they got to anything was that the first time that it occurred, she described afterwards that all she could say that she felt like was that she needed to burst out laughing, but she couldn't. And that is the plot. She is essentially talking for 99% of this film
Yeah.
to a woman who is not talking back to her. And I feel like, yeah, the whole film is a total trip. And with our new format, I kind of like it. I'm just going to kind of get into one thing anyway that stood out to me
100%.
is, and this is somewhat spoiler territory, but you can kind of pick up on this quite early in the film that it is happening. So obviously this nurse is supposed to be looking after this woman, but because she's the only one who can talk, what is actually happening is ultimately the opposite. It's more like it very quickly becomes more of a therapy session for Alma.
Yeah.
Because she's the one doing all the talking, it's very quick that it happens that any semblance of her looking after Elizabeth seems to just fade away. It very much feels more like a therapy session for Elizabeth, which is fascinating because the performance that Bibi Andersson gives is so amazing.
Yeah.
She starts off as a clearly young, aspiring nurse. We find out that she's got a husband, she's got a kid, and she talks about how in her life she almost, and this is actually interesting because it kind of is a similar topic of discussion to next week's film, which we'll talk about, but she talks about how she almost enjoys the security she has in her life because she knows She's in a good relationship. She has a kid.
Yeah.
She's in a job where she has a guaranteed career progression. She has total security in life, and she actually enjoys that. And then smash cut to well, first of all, we see one of the most harrowing images of the Vietnam War, which is happening on TV in the hospital room of Elizabeth, which is when that monk, whose name escapes me, in protest set himself on fire, and she's watching this obviously as it's happening. That happened in '63, I remember, and this film came out in the mid '60s. But obviously, I guess this film is set in '63. So, but she's watching this happen on the news, and then just that whole sort of mini monologue she gives about how content she is with life. You then see Elizabeth, who, from all intents and purposes, is not with her husband anymore because she tears up a letter that he sent her. She doesn't seem to like her child because she tears up a picture of her child in front of her. And as far as career progression goes, well, she's an actress who can't talk. So it's very interesting juxtaposition of she goes on this mini monologue. And then Bergman is just he's so good with the camera, I feel. There's a lot of imagery in his films that just stands out. There's so many shots in this film that stand out to me. And yeah, sometimes he can just make him putting a camera really close up to Liv Ullmann's face just work. Like, a picture tells 1,000 words, as they say. And I feel like in this film in particular, in Bergman's filmography, he tells so many stories with just close-ups or just really interesting blocking with something that happens later in the film. But yeah, I just find it very fascinating because we'll kind of get into our own theories as to what the film means, but I just think it was really interesting how, to begin with anyway, it seems as though Alma is totally content on her life and everything's just set in stone for her and she's delighted, whereas Elizabeth does not have that security whatsoever anymore.
Yeah, and then you can also see Alma. There's a couple of instances where you don't really know if Alma's just imagining Elizabeth speaking,
Yeah.
or if she's not. Again, that plays into Alma's kind of, is it a psychological kind of decline, if you want to call it that, or is it her almost wishing that Elizabeth would speak, or is it actually something that just happened? Did she actually speak? And then she's denying it, like when she says, "Did you just say something?" She'll just shake her head like, "No." So again, it plays into this whole thing of like, are they kind of, is Alma identifying with Elizabeth? Is she Elizabeth? That's another theory we'll come on to, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But it's just like I said,
she isn't.
She says she isn't. Yeah, she says she's new.
She says she isn't.
But again, this is exactly what I mean when I say you can't really judge one performance without the other. Like, it's whatever the intention was, whatever the truth of it is. I'm sure they had to have had this discussion where it's like, you need to play certain scenes contradict each other, but you also need to play certain scenes very much in parallel, in sync with each other. Like, so, because you want to have that kind of that kind of dichotomy of performance. So no, the whole thing is, like you said, a trip. Like I said, I understood maybe, if I'm generous to myself, maybe 20% of the film. And but I still couldn't look away. I still couldn't, like, I didn't press pause once. Like, you know what I mean? It's amazing.
I think I'm fortunate to come into this podcast episode with it being my second viewing.
Yeah, that's I would have loved. 100%.
Yeah, I think I am kind of fortunate there, because for the majority of the time then that we spend, so they move from the hospital. The woman who runs the hospital says, I think the best thing for Elizabeth is actually just a bit of isolation from everyone. Maybe that's all she needs, is a bit of solstice. So she offers them her seaside cabin. So the two of them move to the cabin, and to begin with, as I said, it does come across as though Alma is the nurse of Elizabeth, but that changes very fast. It very quickly becomes a therapy session, and not only does it become a therapy session, but we find out then that Elizabeth is actually studying Alma, and then because she hasn't said anything, obviously, it is somewhat difficult to know where Elizabeth stands in any sort of situation. Obviously, with Ullmann's performance, she's kind of agreeing to some things and maybe shaking her head with other things. But it's kind of difficult to grasp where the character of Elizabeth actually stands with anything until she gets Alma to post some letters for her, and one of them is actually to the woman who owns the hospital. But she doesn't actually seal the letter, so as she's driving, because similar to the audience, it's this point, it's kind of difficult for Alma to kind of know where Elizabeth actually stands on anything. She takes out the unsealed letter to the woman who runs the hospital, and in this letter we kind of figure out a bit more about Elizabeth and a bit more about her psyche, because Alma reads that she's actually finding it enjoyable studying Alma in this place. It's there's elements of psychological horror to this film, especially with the violins as well, with the music, but there's elements of psychological horror, and just the kind of realization here for Alma that the person she's living with maybe isn't who she thinks she is, and that she's actually using this as some sort of weird social experiment is fascinating, because it just shifts the whole narrative as to how she thinks she feels about Elizabeth, and now she feels like she's being basically watched and studied by the person who she's actually supposed to be looking after.
It's like who's actually the doctor and who's actually the patient, almost.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating. So yeah, she goes back to the cabin and she confronts her, says, I found this letter. You have to kind of stop. You have to just say something. I'm kind of going crazy.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth, obviously, she's shaking her head. She denies it. She's still refusing to speak. So Alma, pretty messed up, I'll be honest. She lays out a bunch of broken glass on the pavement. We're laughing obviously because it's so horrific. And then Elizabeth,
so
obviously,
it's worth noting she smashes a glass.
Yeah.
And she goes to clean it up and then realizes, actually,
Yeah.
I might just not clean that up. And then she just sits back and she waits. It's very Tom and Jerry, but psychological horror Tom and Jerry.
Yeah, 100%. So Elizabeth, again, he doesn't do it straight away, Bergman. He kind of, she avoids it a couple of times, but then she does end up stepping in a piece and she squeals. So that's like the first time that we've definitely heard her make a sound. We have heard her say something, but we didn't know if that was a dream sequence. We don't know. We still don't know if that's a dream sequence or not. But obviously, this is the first definite sound that she has made since she's taken the supposed vow of silence. So yeah, Alma's like, okay, right. Well, I know there's nothing wrong with you in that case. Like you're just choosing to do this. And then, if that's not bad enough, what happens soon after? Alma wants her to talk. She says, please just talk to me for a couple of minutes. Again, she lashes out. And when she looks like she's about to throw boiling water from a kettle into her face.
Yeah, at her face.
Oh my days, that's some dark stuff. And again, as you would, Alma just screams and says, stop. So, I think, fair enough, like, that's definitely the thing that would get me to
Yeah. No, literally.
I'll be honest, yeah. So, well, man, Alma does apologise. She begs Elizabeth to stay, but obviously the relationship now is like completely different, completely like has taken a complete 180 turn.
Yeah, it's worth noting as well. So prior to this, some of the discussions they had were really fascinating, and one thing before the letter, during these sort of therapy sessions for Alma that we discover, is Alma herself is also not necessarily who she said she was to begin with, because she had her mini monologue to begin with where she talks about how she's content in her relationship, she loves her husband, almost like a schoolgirl, she has her kid and everything, she has her job, but she gets quite drunk one of the nights and she sort of confesses almost, because I don't know if she's maybe said this to anyone before, that she had a sexual encounter, her and a stranger, a woman who she met on the beach, with two young guys, and that when she got home, she was fearful that one of the young guys got her pregnant. She then had sex with her husband and then definitely did fall pregnant, and then as a result she actually had an abortion, which is a big topic of discussion in this film. And keep in mind, this is the 1960s, so go on Bergman getting that into the old discourse in cinema. Not that he's the first one to do it or anything, but just, you know. pretty cool. But but she yeah, as she gets drunker and as she has more and more one-way conversations, you can kind of see. I don't necessarily think, to begin with anyway, that the facade she's putting up is in any way sinister.
No.
The Later on, when she's kind of having a bit of a psychological break, I would say, when she's about to throw boiling water at her, is obviously a different thing. But that's part of my sort of own individual theory about this movie. But yeah, it's interesting how she goes on this whole tirade then about how Elizabeth isn't who she said she was, and yet she's also not who she said she was, because we actually then, again, and this wouldn't work if Bergman spilled what the film was about or whatever after the fact. We don't actually then know how much of what Alma has told us, who we are following, is actually true either. We don't even know if she is still with her husband, or because the drunker she gets, the less keen she is to talk about him. We don't know if she does actually have a kid at home, because she said earlier she does, and now we're questioning it. Sorry, no, she doesn't say she had a kid earlier, but she said she was looking for kids. But then, there's that whole debate in the film, and it's just really interesting how, as you said, the two performances are kind of one, and it lends itself to the theory that the film itself, or the two characters of Elizabeth and Alma, kind of represent sort of, not necessarily schizophrenia, although I know that a lot of journalists have said that the film's about schizophrenia, but just the sort of dual personalities or multiple personalities within a person trying to coexist at the same time. This is my taking anyway. They're trying to coexist, and sometimes they do coexist, and then sometimes they just totally contradict each other and lash out, such as when Alma goes to throw boiling water at Elizabeth. Elizabeth then storms off because Alma calls her rotten. Then Alma's the one who's on the beach begging for forgiveness from Elizabeth, despite despite prior to the boiling water, it suggested that Elizabeth was actually the one who was the psychologically controlling person or coercive person in the relationship. And the two of them are just trying to coexist, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they just totally contradict each other and have huge, massive fallouts where people threaten to throw boiling water at each other.
Yeah, and jumping on that, the scene where Mr. Vogler, so Elizabeth's husband, arrives, and he's obviously trying to talk to her, but it's Alma who
was
talks.
On the podcast before.
Was he? What? Oh, he's in Seventh Seal.
He was indeed.
Okay, right.
It's Gunnar Bjordstrand, who was the.
I like that name.
I don't want to call him this.
Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't want to call him the sidekick from Seventh Seal, but yeah.
Go on, Gunnar. Go on, Gunnar. Yeah. I like that name. But yeah, when he arrives, then it's Alma who's having a conversation with him, but almost like she's speaking for Elizabeth. So again, a couple of ways you could probably interpret that. Like, is she just kind of trying to provide? Have they spent so much time together that she almost feels she can answer for Elizabeth and have a conversation as Elizabeth, or is it the side of this person, this Alma / Elizabeth person, who is at that moment in time the wife? Because like Elizabeth's looking away, she can hear what's going on, but she's obviously not communicating. So is it actually the same person? Like it's a whole bunch of different, again, a bunch of different interpretations you can come up with. But again, it kind of, for me, probably feeds into, like you were saying, the idea that it is Alma and Elizabeth are one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at this moment, it's like a struggle for which side of this person is going to come out at any one time. So, but yeah, it's a powerful scene because, again, it's so off kilter. You don't really know what's going on. You don't know if Alma is just answering for Elizabeth because she wants to try and be helpful, or is she almost trying to be controlling in that moment? Is she trying to answer for Elizabeth to piss Elizabeth off? So it's there's so much different stuff going on, and then we get like probably the biggest barmy of the entire film. Then the biggest argument between the two of the entire film.
Yeah, and again, it's really interesting just from the wardrobe department, because to begin with, in the film, Alma was in like your stereotypical 1960s nurse uniform, like the white hat and the white skirt and the white blouse, and the hat with a little cross on it. And then we get this argument between the two of them, where it's just interesting that the two of them are both in the exact same outfit. They're both in like a black turtleneck with all black clothing, somewhat one of the, as well. And I'm not just saying this about Scandinavian people, but they look very similar.
Which is intentional, for actually, sure. It's very much intentional.
Which is intentional, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, they basically, it's really interesting again how this is edited. We get a monologue from Alma where she basically explains Elizabeth's whole backstory, and to begin with, where we watch this whole monologue, but with the camera focused on Elizabeth and just her looking away when Alma suggests that she wasn't happy in her marriage whenever the husband wanted kids, and everyone said that she didn't have any mother-like qualities. That they then fell pregnant. She resented the baby because she knew with the pregnancy and stuff that it would take her away from the stage, which is also an interesting thing because that comes up in Autumn Sonata, which is an amazing Bergman film. But the whole idea then that she resented the baby, hated the baby, wanted the baby to die because basically the baby was opposed to all of her wants and needs in life, and she tried to force herself to abort the baby, but ultimately failed, and the baby was delivered, and that then in childhood the baby was actually obsessed with her and loved her even though she hated the baby. And then what's interesting for a first time watcher, because this is how I felt the first time I watched it anyway, was then the scene starts again, but with the camera on Alma's face. And I originally, when I watched this, I was like, oh, is it going to turn out that this is what Elizabeth thought she was going to say, but this is actually what she says, and we've just discovered what Elizabeth actually thinks, and we're going to find out that Alma gets it wrong. But no, Alma actually then just delivers the exact same monologue, but we see Alma delivering it, which again lends itself to the idea that maybe they are one and the same, because how would she have reached into this
part of her
trapped
psyche
memory? But yeah, then at the end we get the iconic, well, there's so many iconic shots in this film, but there's an iconic shot where at the very end she says that she's not Elizabeth, she's happy, she loves, and then there's like a smash, not a smash cut, it's like a jump scare almost, where the half of Alma's face becomes Elizabeth's face, and it's just a unbelievable bit of imagery. And I think that also lends itself to the whole split personality thinking behind the film that I'm maybe coming to. But as we know, there is like a gazillion ways that theory could just be disproved, because
exactly.
It's persona, and there's so many different interpretations of this film that all apply. And it's worth noting as well, Shane, that this film is actually bookended by a young boy in a hospital.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So who do you think this young boy is, and why do you think he's in the film?
It's gotta be the son, right? It's gotta be the child.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
I would assume so.
I mean, I don't know why he'd be there otherwise. It's not. That to me is the most logical argument, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So you're locking in your kind of theory that this is the same person.
I'm locking it in after this watch of the film.
Yeah, that would be my interpretation too. I do think it's about the same person having this psychological struggle with themselves. But again, there's so many different theories. And any theory could be disproved 10 times over. So don't take our word for it.
So there's this young boy who at the beginning of the film, after we get this like real demonic sort of montage of just spooky ass imagery, he sees on a projector in his hospital bed a woman. It's very much intentionally blurred out her face, because that woman could very much either be Elizabeth or Alma. I would assume that this is Elizabeth's son.
I'd imagine so.
And that he's reaching out to Elizabeth's face, but it could very much be Alma's face, and it could be a totally different thing going on here that we just haven't picked up on or haven't thought about enough. But yeah, at the end, again, that boy is still reaching out to this screen, and then yeah, just cool ass way to end a film. Just the film just runs out of film.
Yeah, no, it's
Just
really
like
good.
what a cool way to end a movie. Just it runs out of film.
And Roger Ebert, even because he had said, well, he said that the first time he saw the film, he didn't know what to think, and then the more and more he watched it down the years, he basically, in his opinion, he zeroed in definitively on what the film is, which I don't think it can. I'll be honest, Roger.
No, it doesn't.
Like, fair play to you, mate. You have your theories, so like a legend they are, but like, I mean, I don't think that's possible really. But he said that he also thinks it's like it's like a kind of metaphor for the art of filmmaking itself, which yeah, like I'm not going to go into every point that he makes there, but yeah, that's interesting to think about as well. That it's almost about creation, if you think of it like that. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, I think and about like obviously a lot of people say making a movie is like whatever trying to have a child. It's like bringing up a baby kind of thing. So from conception to obviously
But not
when
a
it's out in the
leopard.
world. No, not a leopard. No.
No, not that baby. You're not bringing up that baby.
Ah, I get that. Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
Jimmy Stewart. I didn't get that at all. But yeah, like if you think about that kind of interpretation as well. So, but anyway, that's his
You said
interpretation.
Jimmy Stewart. That's Cary Grant.
Oh, it is. What I was thinking of Philadelphia Story.
Oh my god, you've outed yourself twice.
Oh god. I've seen Bring Up Baby as well.
Gets the persona discussion perfectly correct in the episode, and then falls on the classic Hollywood section of it. Oh my god.
That's deadly.
Are we snobs?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting to think about that. But again, there's hundreds of theories. Well, dozens of theories at least.
I'd say there probably could be hundreds. Now,
Yeah,
half of them are probably wrong, but
yeah.
there could be hundreds.
I don't think there's any one theory that's definitely correct. I'll put it that way.
Nah.
Or if there is, Bergman certainly never divulged it.
So, Shane, with all our spoilers out there and that, can you give us your personal feelings towards Persona? What you think of the films? Any use? Any good?
Yeah, it's pretty damn good. If you're into this kind of psychological thriller, psychological drama, psychological horror, again the themes of like doubling and all that stuff like that's been a thing in cinema and in literature for like however long it's been. Those things have been a thing, but this is a really good example of that, where it's like there's so many different interpretations. Again, that's our interpretation, is that it's the same person, but even if it's not, you can almost see how they've kind of lived parallel lives, these two women, and how they have connected in over certain things, but then how it's kind of how much they also diverge in their ways. So many different interpretations. I understood, like I keep saying, I understood maybe 20% of the film, if that. But yeah, if psychological drama and psychological thrillers and psychological horror is your thing, then yeah, you should check this out for sure. I gave it 4 stars. What about you?
Yeah, I find that Persona's really hard to give a rating to.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
I was stuck
I-
between a few. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, as I said at the start, it's not my favorite of Bergman's films. So that was kind of a way of me going off what I rated the film, but ultimately, this is definitely one of those films where like star rating, not the star ratings really matter anyway, but like this is like a specific example of where you just ignore the star rating. Everyone should see Persona, in my opinion. It is one of the most talked about films in like film discourse and film studies, and it's so clear to see why. It is so open to interpretation, like so effortlessly open to interpretation, that yeah, I just think the film is, I can only compare it to the works that I've seen of Tarkovsky. I've not really seen many David Lynch films. He's someone who probably this year I should realistically work on a bit more. But I can only compare it to some of the Tarkovsky films that I've seen, where you definitely need to be in the headspace to watch it, because you need to you need to really have your concentration cap on, your thinking cap on. But once you have it on and you're like in there, even if on a first watch or a second watch or a 10th watch you don't get all of it, you definitely come out of the film feeling a lot of things and thinking, if not thinking about the film, then thinking about maybe the themes and subtext of the film, because there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of subtext that we haven't even discussed in this episode because there's so much to unpack with this film. But I also went with a 4-star rating. It's a fucking star rating for Persona, so just ignore it.
Okay.
But I think that personally, Bibi Andersson in particular is so amazing in this film. Liv Ullmann is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, she's fantastic. But I think for just the sheer amount of dialogue and the amount of mental strain and like almost like personality flips that the character that Alma goes through, just the sheer amount of all of it to get that performance so perfect is such a credit to Bibi Andersson. I think it is an exceptional performance, and yeah, Bergman's use of the camera is amazing. His blocking is amazing in that scene where Alma is talking to Elizabeth's husband. The blocking in that is so incredible, as are some of the like nighttime dream sequences where the two of them are either looking down the camera or when Elizabeth's almost like a ghostly figure wandering through the hallways of the cottage. Just the way he uses the camera is incredible, and that shot as well of the kid reaching out to the projector is so iconic as well. It's so great, such a great use of focus, and ultimately Persona is a film that everyone should see. But yeah, it's not my favorite Bergman film, but it's something that people could just sit down and talk about for hours and still not come to any sort of consensus.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
100%.
And Shane, I reckon before we wrap this whole episode up, we've actually left not a huge window in between recording episodes this time round, but I'm sure we've both seen a handful of films. So let's talk about the handful of films that we've watched recently.
Yeah, I've not seen too many, but I've been trying to get into Buster Keaton for a while. So I was
nice.
I'll check out Sherlock Jr., a very funny film.
I like that.
Some of the stunts in that are like, wow. I mean, fair play to the guy. He's very inventive, very very ahead of his time in a way. Ida Lupino, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but she's the person who directed she's the first ever woman to direct a film noir in America. A film called The Hitchhiker. It's only 71 minutes, so actually I think maybe coming up towards this year's Noirvember, maybe that's something we could potentially check out. But it's really effective noir. It's about a serial killer hitchhiker who takes two guys, kidnaps them, and a whole bunch of shenanigans ensue from there. Really effective stuff. She's an actress. Actually, I've seen a couple of her films before. She was in a film with Humphrey Bogart. The name is escaping.
The name really rings a bell.
Yeah, she's good. She's a good actress. Excuse me. She was in High Sierra. That's the film I'm thinking of. That was like Bogart's very first kind of breakout lead role, even before Casablanca. So that's the film that kind of made him a leading man as opposed to a backup player. She's really good in that film.
She's in The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which I literally watched 2 weeks ago.
Well, I saw Naked Gun 33 and a third, which is the third Naked Gun film, the final one starring Leslie Nielsen. Funny stuff. I think it's slightly better than the second. Again, a lot of jokes haven't aged too well, so it is what it is. But some of them are still very, very funny. Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a Spielberg film I've been wanting to watch for a long time. Oh boy, this is like top 2 Spielberg for me. I absolutely adored this film. The final act will live long in the memory. It's like E.T. meets Arrival with it's just a whole bunch of Spielberg magic sprinkled in there, like the whole Amblin-esque energy, but then it's also really dark at times. Richard Dreyfuss really goes for it. Like he has talk about a psychological kind of decline, a psychological kind of descent into madness, if you want to call it that. The guy properly goes for it. It's so memorable. I don't want to spoil too much about what happens in the film, but I was absolutely blown away by it. Gave it 5 stars. Amazing, amazing movie. And yeah, actually, that's it for movies. I did see
Yeah,
all
I've
of
seen
the
very few as well.
yeah.
I've just checked it. I've only seen 3, so
Yeah, I have seen the new season of Black Mirror, which are like standalone episodes. Kind of some of them are feature length. Don't worry, I'm not gonna mention all of them. It's a Black Mirror season. There's going to be some episodes better than others. You know what I mean? I think that's the case with any anthology show, to be honest. If I'd pick one that I just want to single out for kind of praise, it would be an episode called Eulogy, starring the incredible Paul Giamatti, one of my favorite actors. Oh man, this is like nothing else Black Mirror I've done before. So it's about this. Obviously, it's about tech, Black Mirror, but it's about this kind of system that's been designed where when someone passes away, you can get in touch with their loved ones or people who knew them, and it's this AI which has been designed to gather up all of these people's different memories and recollections of this person, and then at the memorial service or funeral, whatever it is, on the day, they can actually lock in and kind of see the best moments of this person's life in a way. But if that sounds kind of beautiful, it is, but it's also like the episode is about basically a relationship gone wrong, and it's about this guy looking back on his life and all his regrets and stuff. Oh man, it really hit me in the feels towards the end. Paul Giamatti, legend that you are, my friend. So just because I don't think it's quite like anything Black Mirror has done before, I do think it's the strongest episode from this season. If you want to kind of check it out, because Black Mirror is the kind of thing you don't need to watch every single episode. You can just kind of cherry pick certain ones that are of interest to you. So if anyone's into kind of Black Mirror, I would definitely recommend that episode from this new season in particular. What about you, Harry?
yeah. So I saw 3 films since we last recorded. They are all films I could talk about for quite a while. First of all, I watched Police Story 3 Super Cop. Oh my god. As a result of this movie, I know I last time, or maybe it was the time before, I went on a tirade about how Jackie Chan is the greatest action star in the history of the genre, and that he always manages to make his third acts incredible. This is like maybe the best third act I've seen of his so far. It is insane. I'm not going to spoil too much, but just know that it involves a helicopter, a rope ladder hanging from it, him jumping from skyscrapers, and a moving train. And because it's Hong Kong, there's no... I watched the behind the scenes because I have the 4K of it from Eureka Films. I watched the behind the scenes interview with Jackie Chan, and he was saying that with the rope ladder and the helicopter, they would literally, because they were flying through the city that they were shooting in Malaysia, in this helicopter with Jackie Chan dangling from a rope ladder underneath the helicopter. He was saying that in order for them to actually get this to work, he had to attach his hands to the rope ladder with a wire that he didn't trust, because he just didn't trust the guy who made it, so he was holding on for dear life. And it was a 10-minute flight for the helicopter from the field that he was hanging on from to the city centre where they were actually shooting it. So he was just dangling from a helicopter for 10 minutes before they even started rolling the fucking cameras. And then he's doing all these insane flying around buildings and stuff, and then the train stuff happens, which just elevates that third act to a whole other level. Michelle Yeoh is so good in this film. Legend. It is a crime that Michelle Yeoh and Jackie Chan, because they are mates, it is a crime that they didn't do more films together, because they work so well together. And oh my god, it is so great. It is one of my favorite trilogies ever.
I have it on my DVR. I want to check it out.
Yeah, I remember you saying I adore that trilogy so much. And as well, this is actually doing such a disservice that I've forgotten the character's name, because it's Maggie Cheung's character, May. Yeah, Maggie Cheung, incredible actress, but May gets put through the ringer in this trilogy. She is the most, God love her, she's the most disrespected character in all 3 films. It's probably like most people's biggest gripe.
Sounds like OJ from the Naked Gun trilogy. That is. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, Yeah, I do know the OJ jokes in the Naked Gun trilogy. I haven't seen it yet, but she just she just can't catch a break, and she never gets her win back. She's basically a
Yeah.
jobber in the trilogy, despite being the main character's girlfriend. She just never nothing ever goes her way, and God, does she get dunked on in this movie in particular? She has a horrible time. Yeah. And she's not even written to be a bad person or anything. Just bad stuff constantly happens to her, and then like she doesn't actually get to get revenge or anything. It just happens. Yeah, it's terrible. And yeah, Jackie Chan's character is a terrible boyfriend, but he's an incredible super cop. So you got to give him flowers where he's due. I then watched Santo versus the Infernal Men because on my Enter Santo 2 movie set that I got from Indicator Films, I only watched Santo versus Evil Brain, which is the first El Santo movie. El Santo, for those of you who don't know, was a luchador in the 1960s who did action films and horror films in Mexico. He was a huge box office draw, but he wasn't to begin with, because he is barely in this film either. He's actually in this film less than Santo versus Evil Brain, and that was my biggest complaint about that movie. This movie fucking sucks. It is a terrible, terrible movie. It makes no sense. We follow a incredibly boring detective played by the guy who played Evil Brain in the previous one. He is so boring, and unfortunately for this film's audience, myself included, you're sat there waiting for Santo to come, but for some reason, Santo is a detective, obviously in full lucha gear, shirtless and everything. That's not the stupid part about this movie. The stupid part is he spends the whole movie swimming in the sea, so he only fights the bad guys when they get to the dock. So if there's any crimes happening in the city, we are just supposed to expect this boring detective to go there because Santo's too busy going for a paddle. But for some reason, these idiots keep meeting at the dock. And then Santo just emerges from the water, head to toe, just in his lucha gear, drenched, punches a few guys, and then just hops back into the water to pick up a bit of litter. I'm not joking. There's one point where he's beating up bad guys, and he beats them up, and then instead of doing anything with the information he's heard, he spots a cigarette pack that's floating in the sea, so he jumps in to get rid of the litter. And then we don't see him for like 25 minutes, and it's not a very long it's like a 71-minute film. Like, it's so stupid. Such a stupid film. Yeah, it's a Santo film, but they had not mastered the art of the Santo film 2 films into his career. And then, finally, the third film I watched is a film that I was not expecting to like as much as I did. First of all, Brett Ratner is a scumbag, but I thought that the first Rush Hour was a good film. It was dated, but the action was fun, and as irritating in certain scenes as Chris Tucker can be, it's undeniable that him and Jackie Chan definitely had some level of chemistry. Rush Hour 2 is a perfect American action sequel. It builds on the first film. Its set pieces work. The set design is incredible. Jackie Chan's stunts they're not Hong Kong Jackie Chan, but bear in mind, this is the 2000s. This is when Jackie wasn't really allowed to do a lot of things. Some of the stuff he does in this film is incredible. Again, in the same way where the Santo film, you don't get nearly enough Santo, you get the perfect amount of Jackie Chan in this film, because while Chris Tucker is being all silly and stupid and whatever and getting beaten up by the bad guys, yeah, Jackie Chan's doing crazy flips and kicking people and backflipping over sofas and carpets. And the one that I couldn't get my head over was when he does that dive through the tiny little, and they showed it in the credits how many attempts that he took for him to get it right. But the little gap where obviously the teller in the casino will be taking money and giving it to people, Jackie Chan does a dive feet first, not head first, where he slides through that tiny little gap. It looked impossible. And then obviously they show in the credits it took him about 40 fucking goes because it was bordering on impossible to actually pull that stunt off. Because he's Jackie Chan, he does it. Yeah, that film, I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. I am waiting. I have about genuinely one came today, which I'll definitely watch tonight. I have about 17 or 18 Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee films on the way. So I was like, I really want to watch something, and Netflix have the Rush Hour sequels. Yeah. So I was like, right, give me Rush Hour 2. I was so pleasantly surprised. I really think, as far as, not to diss American action movies, but the incredible ones are few and far between. But this is a very, very, very good American action sequel that I thoroughly enjoyed. But Brett Ratner is a scumbag. And that is the Persona episode of the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Now, Shane, I want to get your opinion on something because I somewhat got our dates mixed up. So, last week's episode was the 1 year anniversary of the Golden Hour Film Podcast.
Correct.
But that was actually going off of when we first announced the Golden Hour Film Podcast. The first episode was a year ago this week.
Okay. This is episode 53.
Exactly, which is where it gets confusing because there's 52 weeks in a year.
Do you know
so how does that work? How did that happen?
That's true.
That makes no sense.
Yeah, that's true.
This is episode 53. How was our first episode a year ago this week?
Time is a flat circle. Matthew McConaughey voice. I don't know, man.
Yeah. That makes no sense. Because I was saying with Chest, like, episode 52, it's a year in the podcast. But no. This episode comes out on Friday. On Friday the 25th of April.
Yeah, the 26th was, I think it was the 26th was last year, was the first episode we dropped.
That makes no sense. This is episode 53.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I know we're just outing ourselves as absolute morons right now, because I'm sure there's...
I think we did that a long time ago.
But, forgive me for saying that last week was the 1 year anniversary, because it was 52 weeks in. But anyway, the last 2 weeks, it has been 1 year of the Golden Hour Film Podcast.
Just merge it.
Thank you all so much.
The whole, just an extended celebration.
Exactly. And for the next month, we have a new arc on the way. Shane, want to talk about it?
Yeah, yes, I can, and yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
As Harry's going over to Cannes, the month of May, obviously, special month in the world of cinema. So what we're going to do is we're going to cherry pick some of the best Cannes winners, the Cannes Palme d'Or winners from kind of classic era of Hollywood. So next week, but we just pick next week and then announce them as we go.
I'll be honest, just for the Instagram sake, I reckon we announce them all because there's a few long ones in there. So if anyone wants to watch them prior, we should probably give them plenty of time to watch them.
That's true. So next week's episode, anyway, is Marty, directed by Delbert Mann, and starring Ernest Borgnine. Harry had seen this film before. I had not.
I can never watch Marty enough times.
Yeah, let's put it this way.
I just can't. It's such an amazing movie.
Yeah, let's put it this way. I've seen the film already, and a little quick preview for next week's episode. It's amazing. So
it's such an amazing movie.
Yeah. So the other films then coming up after that. Let me just pop it up open here, in case I get the order wrong. So bear with me. After that, we've got La Dolce Vita, directed by Federico Fellini. Obviously, a very long film. So again, if you want to check that out, set aside a few hours, I think, similar to the Seven Samurai episode. After that, another long film, which is The Leopard, directed by Luchino Visconti from 1963.
Yes. Alain Delon on the podcast.
Yeah.
Such an icon.
After that, a film by Jacques Demy, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And rounding off, Yes We Can arc. One of my favourite 1970s films, Francis Ford Coppola's magnum opus, in my opinion. And I say that, I fucking love The Godfather. Well, I prefer it's not his magnum opus. There's so many 70s films from Coppola. Yeah, you've got The Godfather. You've got The Godfather Part 2. You've got Apocalypse Now.
Come on.
But The Conversation, directed by the late great Gene Hackman. Yeah, it's amazing.
You've got Jack.
Yeah, Jack. The Conversation.
Arguably, Francis Ford Coppola's magnum opus.
The Conversation, we'll get on to it, but that's a pretty good film, let's put it that way. 5 films in the month of May, and yes we can, and yes we will talk about them.
Yeah, I am so unbelievably looking forward. I think next week I'll probably talk a little bit more about Cannes itself at the end of the episode. But yeah, very presumptuous of us to do a Cannes arc because I could have very, very easily been not invited to, like, just not gotten accredited. This would have been a pretty horrendous month, if anything. But just really rubbing salt in the wounds. But somehow I got it. Crazy shit. And yeah, no, it's gonna be a great month. Love an L 5 week arc. Love a 5 week arc on the podcast.
And that's there's more to come after that, by the way. Some really, really big stuff lined up after that. So yeah, check that out as well when we get to it. But yeah, yes, we can. So that's our next month arc. So we hope you tune in.
Yeah, and that was the Persona episode 53 of the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Next week it's Marty. What a film. I can't wait to talk about it with my co-host, not guest host, Shane Mulvaney. And we'll see you all then. Thank you very much. I have been Harry Bailey.
I've been Shane Mulvaney.
And we'll see you then. Thank you very much, and goodbye.